Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who has been through a lot of crazy situations, but that one takes the cake.
Tim Longo. Yeah,
that one it does take the cake. And speaking of cake, before we get to the game from tonight, I wanted to mention Eric Wolpar from last week. That was a great conversation. Really loved chatting with him. And as I said, I think I said in the post show or the outro, like he really got the assignment. He was, of the many guests we've had, he's probably the most just devs talking to devs person, and just in there.
It was nice. Yeah, for sure.
Really good fun thing to do. And then the other bit of cake is we are going to be having a live episode taping / stream. This is a bonus reward for the Defeating Games for Charity event that was last January. We're trying to make sure we get it done before next January. So we're going to do that on the 28th of this month, 28th of October, which means we'll be playing our game from this week. If you're in the Discord, you know what that is. We'll get to it in a moment. We'll be playing that and having episodes about it on what would be the 8th, 15th, and 22nd. And then we will do that live episode, which we'll be discussing Portal 2 on, to tie it back into the cake, because we've been playing that on Tim's Twitch channel Wednesday evenings when he normally streams. Our recording will be at our normal recording time, which is for us the Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern, or 8 p.m. Eastern rather, and then I'll get this all down by the time we're actually there. Next week I'll do this better. And in the meantime, we'll have 3 episodes about our current game, our spooky game for October, and then hopefully we will be able to come to that episode and do it live, redeem that reward, and also have an opportunity for people to ask questions in the chat if they want to directly. I don't know if we'll do any other kinds of things. I've thought about some ideas, but we'll see where we are.
You mean like singing reviews?
No, I wasn't thinking. I think that ship has kind of sailed. We just kind of moved on from that at some point.
Has it?
Well,
I don't think you get to decide.
We also don't get any, I have a couple in the email that have been in there for years, but we haven't had an actual review with a song in it for a long time. So I don't know.
And our goal is to finish Portal 2 co-op, right? So as
correct.
well.
Yeah. So we would aim to finish that
over the 3 more.
Yeah, the next 3 weeks. We'll also maybe talk a little bit about the Portal 2 single player campaign. I don't know that I'm going to play all of it again, but I have played a bunch of it already. So we'll see where we get with that. I don't know how much you've played of the single player, Tim.
Only the first chapter, yeah. But I am going to try to play more. Yeah, I don't. Okay. I feel like I remember it being longer than I had expected.
It's long. But, it's a lot longer than
longer than 1 for sure.
Yeah.
But so I'll see. I'm going to get as far as I can, but playing it on the Steam Deck makes it easy.
Okay. Yeah, we expect your hit rate to be about the same as for the main cast. So.
Fair.
So it's a 50-50 chance, folks. Mm-hmm. Anyway, let's move on to talk about our game for this week and the next couple of weeks. We are playing, finally, now that we've opened up the decades. We are turning to 2010's Deadly Premonition. I'm going to set the game a little bit in its year. Last year we played Alan Wake, I believe. So we were following. Wasn't it, or was it the year before?
You could be right. I'm not the one to ask.
Yeah, I think it was last year. So we're actually following up. Alan Wake actually came out in the same year, so it is interesting and is in a similar setting. So it's interesting to compare them from that standpoint. I'm sure that's going to come up a lot over the next couple of weeks. But additional games that came out in 2010 that are kind of interest because we played them or predecessors to them on the cast. Resident Evil 5 came out, God of War 3, BioShock 2, Halo Reach, Super Mario Galaxy 2, although that's so far from Super Mario 64 in some ways. It's hard to compare. Fallout New Vegas, Civilization 5, Dead Rising 2, another horror game there. Metal Gear Peace Walker. I think those are all the ones that I had that were related to or sequels to games that we've played. But then you also have Amnesia, Dark Descent, and Limbo, Darksiders, Heavy Rain, Red Dead Redemption, Danganronpa, Trigger Happy Havoc, which I believe is the first in that sort of visual novel-y kind of weird series on the PlayStation. And then some additional sequels, StarCraft 2, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, which I mentioned to Tim in our pre-show is probably my favorite, and I recently replayed it, and Mass Effect 2. I think, do you have any others you want to throw out there? I think I
think you got them all. You mentioned.
I think I got the big ones.
StarCraft 2, I think you mentioned.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's especially those horror games that are all in the same year, and it just dawned on me that none of those horror games that I think are all kind of impacting each other were made in the US.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
But Amnesia doesn't take place in the US. But you know what I'm saying? It's like they're made by people from different, cultures, essentially trying to and succeeding in representing that some sort of stylized version.
Amnesia and Limbo are kind of not that. Limbo I wouldn't call.
Yeah, no, I wasn't counting. Limbo.
Limbo's kind of a horror game as well, in my view, anyway. So yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd even put. I mean, Heavy Rain isn't really. It's more of a thriller.
But it's in the space.
It's in the space. It's kind of adjacent. And I don't know what you would call Danganronpa. It's more like Battle Royale, the movie, not in its mechanic. It's not a game where you fight a bunch of other kids in that way, but it is about high school kids kind of in a I don't know, murder party. So
I know literally nothing about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mention it because it's one of those that's a white whale for me that someday I'm going to play and just have never gotten around to. And I own it. So someday I really will play it. But anyway, so that's the year that was. It's quite a, it's a sequel heavy year, especially in the sort of AAA space. But with Alan Wake and Deadly Premonition and some of these others that are projects of smaller scope, I think you're seeing some interesting things. I would put Darksiders in that as well, which is a game that I quite like and have played a couple of times. So, interesting kind of year, but not one of those where you're seeing lots of new ideas, I guess I'd say.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
It is I guess 5 years into that generation of consoles, with the Xbox 360 coming out in 2005. So I guess this is kind of what you expect, right? Is like you're getting later into a cycle. You're starting to see a lot more sequels, often polished and large and interesting in their own right in some ways, but also trying to pay off on investments that have happened earlier in the generation. So I guess that's a common theme we see kind of in the middle of that time. And I think that what the next consoles came out in maybe 2014. So we're square kind of in the middle of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what makes this game so even weirder to me.
Yeah.
It's like, it's original IP. It's doing some pretty different things. Putting it toe to toe with Alan Wake. Yeah. So some stuff will come up, for sure. I don't remember the dates of release about how toe to toe they were, but
They were probably pretty close, although I don't have that in front of me either. Because why would I do that, Tim?
Looks like oh no. Yeah.
February 23rd, 2010. Yeah, so this is earlier in the year, from
Yeah.
Alan Wake, which came out, I think, in September, something like that. It was definitely a later in the year kind of deal. Anyway, that's our next game. We'll talk. I mean, I'm only going to talk briefly about Swery 65, which is to say Hidetaka Suehiro. Sorry if I am mispronouncing that. I am terrible at Japanese names. And developed by Access Games. He's kind of because of this game, kind of established himself as a bit of an auteur in that way because it had such a unique voice in games. We'll talk about how unique the voice is necessarily because of how close it is to a beloved property of ours. I mean, it's another reason why I wanted to play this year in particular is that we lost
Mhm.
David Lynch
Yeah.
back in January or February, and so it's time to play something heavily inspired by him for sure. Anyway, uh, and then published by, at least in North America, it was published by Access, AKSYS, not to be confused with Access, ACCESS, which was the developer. And then this director's cut, which is how we're playing the game. I'm playing it on PlayStation 3, and Tim is playing it on PC, Steam Deck, trying to get that working with
Well, I'm playing
compatibility
on
mode.
PC right now,
Oh, you're
yeah,
playing on
but
PC right now. Okay,
because it wouldn't, it actually just crashes on Steam
yeah,
Deck. But
there is a link in the Discord, for those who are interested in probably the episode discussion channel, which links to an article to tell how to get it working on the Steam Deck. I can't vouch for that at all. I don't have a Steam Deck, but generally people are pretty helpful there. So you might even check that out yourself, Tim. I
yeah,
don't.
I'll look and see.
Okay. So, Tim, other than me talking about this game, which might be all the contact you have with this game, what did you know about Deadly Premonition coming into playing it?
Yeah, almost nothing. You definitely were my main contact on it, but you're not, you're always pretty, I think, disciplined with how far you go, because I think I don't like spoilers, even though you don't care typically.
Yeah, I don't.
Um, but you have some discipline there, so I think you've talked around what it is, and I do remember when the game came out, and since then, it's always been very clear to me that it's had a cult following, and of course, Swery comes up all the time too, still, along with Suda 51, and now they're both apparently working on a game, or they did work on a game together. Um, so I've known of it, and I knew the Twin Peaks influence, because that's always what people would bring up when it comes to the game. I remember, for instance, I don't know if it was Giant Bomb at that time or if they had left yet or not, but I remember that group talking about the game when it came out, and so I heard it through their reviews and eyes,
Hmm.
and talking about sort of like it's the impression that it was making, because of its very direct influence. And probably for better. I was going to say for better for worse, but I think I can say clearly for better. We haven't had a Twin Peaks game, or
Hmm.
we haven't had any. I can't think of others that would be very directly related to Lynchian style
Yeah.
in the video game space. So I think that is, for me, at least from an outsider's perspective, I always felt like this game was the one that held that mantle. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, that do you want to play a Twin Peaksy kind of game? This, Alan Wake is in there too, but I feel like luckily
That is
for
more
them,
Stephen King, really, as well.
Stephen King, and I
Yeah.
think that I would even say, of course, neither of us have played two yet, but I played, American Nightmare, and we both played Control quite a bit. Um, I do feel like luckily they have created their own thing
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
most part, but their influences are clear. But I do think Remedy has established their own. While this game very very clearly, yeah, is coming from that. So that's all I knew really.
Okay.
I mean, I knew it was survival horror. so I assumed it was like a Resident Evil clone.
Mhm.
So that is sort of true. Um,
There's some truth in that, yeah, for sure. And as we play, I don't know how far we'll get in 3 weeks. I mean, I will probably replay it entirely, but I think it takes place over a very short period of time, like 3 days or something like that. I is my recollection is like, and we'll talk about what that means um, this
hmm.
evening, because that's something I think is, like I said, one of the things I don't think you know about the game, and I didn't know about the game going into it originally. But I'd like to
No, I mean
tell
it
you.
says in the report at the end of the chapters, it says how many days it's been.
Yes,
So
yeah,
if
which
it's
reminds
three
me of
days,
Fatal Frame, which actually might be the game we played last year.
oh,
Um,
you're right. That's what I was gonna say because I think we had our interview last year, but
yes,
we
right.
played,
We
but
played at the yeah,
we
yeah.
couldn't get
Yeah, because they're
Sam on
busy
until
finishing Alan Wake 2.
yeah, right,
So,
right.
yeah, okay. Yeah, that
Oh,
makes
Fatal
sense.
Frame.
Yeah,
I
serious
just had
flashback.
nervous
Well,
flashbacks.
that has that same structure of, like, at the end of the first night, right, or whatever, at the end of this
Yeah,
period of
yeah.
time, which is why I brought it up and why it
Man,
came to
that
mind.
game is scary.
Yeah, that's a scary game. This is a scary
Jesus.
game. This game is not scary like that, so it'll be a little easier to sleep this month. Okay, well, I'd say your impressions are pretty similar to what mine were. I mean, I didn't know Swery65 before this, but I would call him and Pseudo51 kind of auteurist, and from a culture that you don't, with the exception of Kojima, you don't really think of as being um, heavily auteur based, right? It's not, they're not kind of front and center. They're directors. I feel like in
Yeah,
Japan they're kind of
they really
understated. I
try
mean,
not to,
yeah,
it seems
their
like.
names are out there, but it's not like, you know it doesn't feel like the career path there, in some ways. Like it's like it's very much the team makes the game. There is a director at the top typically, and especially I guess in horror. But um, but these felt to me at the time in 2010 as like almost indie developers, even though, I mean, Access Games I don't think of as a huge developer, so it probably is kind of indie. Suda 51 has kind of, they were going and doing like Grasshopper Manufacturer or whatever he was doing at the time, and it just was kind of a weird time from that standpoint. I'm like, oh, we're getting these weirder games um,
Yeah, yeah, and
crossing
it's
over.
yeah. Well, and that era, we probably talked to, so we don't have to go too deeply ad nauseum about it with Alan Wake, but that era was, because it was mid cycle, like you said, there's a pattern there, at least in the old days, there was a very consistent pattern with the cycle of years within a generation and how companies would de-risk mid-cycle, and that's why Brett listed off so many sequels, because they would come out with maybe more first iteration of games at the beginning of the cycle and then try to amortize their investments
Right.
in that first game, which
Yeah,
probably
you're using an
often
engine, hopefully, again and again, and
exactly,
yeah,
and most of the time those games don't make their money back in the way that they would like. So doing a sequel is like, if you make it that far, you really kind of have
yeah.
to make it worthwhile.
Well, and
So
also you have a team that knows how to make that game, so it's a
yeah,
natural fit to keep
right.
making it. I mean, BioShock 2 is kind of the outlier there because it was literally made by a different team across the country.
Yeah, yeah, that
Um,
was a weird
Kind
example.
of a
Yeah.
weird example because 2K, I guess, that's who that is, right? 2K.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Yeah, so they kind of wanted to like, well, while you're doing your next, we know how long it takes you to do games, and
That
so
was the problem. That was the
yeah,
problem. Yeah, it
yeah.
was that the sequel they wanted was not going to be out when they wanted
Well,
it.
and
So
the other one there is Fallout New Vegas, which is the same story.
same story. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
because
So
Fallout 4 came out. Oh, let's see,
well, the
2008 is Fallout 3, so 2000 like 14 or something, 2000 even
well, you
maybe
weren't even
15.
working on
I
Fallout
was no
4.
longer there. Yeah,
It was like, no, we're going to stop working on Fallout and work on go
go
back
go back to Elder Scrolls.
to
Yeah,
Elder Scrolls. So it's like,
yeah,
okay, well, we have to do something then because they're
yeah,
not going to be ready anytime soon. So
yeah. He
yeah,
was trying to
so
capitalize on a real big success, even though that hadn't happened with the Elder Scrolls series itself. With Fallout being a property and IP they purchased, they I don't know. I think management felt differently about that. I won't talk too much about what the team thought about that, but anyway.
Yeah, there's some stories to tell. But
some friction,
what
probably.
what I was going to say about this particular era that I remember, and this is definitely anecdotal and I'm generalizing, but with Swery, if you kind of see where he came from, because he actually goes back all the way to Neo Geo SNK, and so you see where Suda came up. I forget where Suda came up. Swery, you have Kojima obviously is still technically working with Konami exclusively, but then remember Clover Platinum, right? So there was
Yeah.
that transition. There was the was it which Final Fantasy guy was the one that left to do Blue Dragon and start his own thing?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
Tim, it's after like 9
I
o'clock.
put you on the spot. Yeah. Anyway, my
It was
point.
the father of Final Fantasy, and
Yeah, we're the worst. I'm sorry, everybody yelling at us. Calamity's so pissed off right now.
Hironobu Sakaguchi.
Yeah, Sakaguchi. Yeah, thank you. And so my point is that the Japanese game development community was shifting a bit too, and I don't obviously know the ins and outs of that because we're not in it, but there was a series of creators who were starting their own things and doing. I would even put Shenmue in there too, right? Of like all of these really talented people who were like, I'm just gonna go, and Suda's the best example because he was like embracing punk rock culture in the way that he even branded himself. And so it's like, but it was like within this 5-year span, I feel like, right? And then Clover was really well regarded and then became platinum and all this kind of, so it's just, and kind of trying to break away
Suda
even
51 was Capcom.
Capcom, right? Exactly.
Because
they all have
he
their
did one
stars.
of the games. It was Capcom 5, right? And I think another Capcom 5 guy, the one who made Killer 7, and I'm not going to come up, not Killer 7. Oh God, what was it called?
Beautiful Joe.
Beautiful Joe. That
Yeah.
person split off too, and I think that
exactly.
was Clover, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe that was just a delayed, because the same thing happened in Western development about 5 years earlier, right? When you have like gathering of developers and you have Ion Storm and like all of these sort of collective, so maybe that was sort of they were the next wave, but it was just an interesting time.
It's also when Shinji Mikami left, right around this time as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
So
exactly. Yeah.
it
So
really is. There was something in the
was
air, and
happening.
I feel like the guy who did Ninja Gaiden Black, the guy who wears the black sunglasses,
God damn
also
it, yeah.
he also went to Clover, I think, maybe, or something, or Platinum, maybe Platinum.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I feel like this was the time where there were a lot of people who were like in Japan, and like you said, maybe following the West in that way, who were just kind of breaking out and doing new things, and just like, we're not going to be, we do actually want to go out and have our own kind of auteurist voices out there, and we've got ideas, and we feel these other companies are too hidebound, or whatever. So it's very, very possible that was kind of in the water at the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting period.
Yeah.
And of course, self-publishing was, or smaller publishers were also becoming possible.
Right. Well, I mean, we just finished our, at least
indies.
our indie series, right? And that was all in the same time frame too. And a lot of the ones we played were on the West, but at least Cave Story was not, so so yeah, it's just interesting because obviously each culture is going to have, and each region is going to have its own version of these sorts of transitions, because the business is different, the cultures are different and stuff. But there was a series. I just remember there being a series of them, and this game, not necessarily one of the poster children, but I do think it's kind of in the conversation as far as like, what did they do?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
And I think that's why. And I only mentioned Giant Bomb back in the day, or that group, that I generally respected their editorial opinions. that's, I think, why they kept talking about it, because it was a surprise. It was like, it was just came out of nowhere in a way.
Yeah.
So as
Yeah, it would have been
as
on my bingo card for the year, of things that I was like, I'm going to want to play this year. And I think it was because I was, at that time very in the kind of blogosphere and all of that, that I even kind of heard about it and was like, oh, I got to play this, like indie developers at the time were talking about it. And I was like, oh, well, clearly I have to have that. I actually originally played it on the 360, and I have a disc somewhere, but I didn't want to connect the 360 up here. I've got currently 3 consoles connected to this TV. It's more than that. I got PS3, 4, and 5. I don't know why I have the 4 up here. The 5 does all of those. But anyway, it was kind of, I was like, well, I'll play it on the PlayStation this time out, and see how it's a little different. And like I said, we're playing the director's cut, which came out 3 years later. So it will be a little less janky, although you clearly will have some, figuring out to do. It's back to Interstate 76 for you as far as that goes.
Oh yeah, luckily it's not that bad.
Yeah.
That was just tragic. I wonder if I still want to pursue that someday, fix that. Yeah,
Right.
but yeah, just for so it sounds like Steam Deck people know about from the Discord, but I'm even playing on PC, and I didn't have time to troubleshoot it, but there seems to be a compatibility, issue that you can fix. But I was running for this session, I was running at about 15 frames the whole time, so it's not the ideal experience.
Yeah, that's not good for a game that's 12 years old. So, or 15 years old, 12 years for this edition. I guess we've danced around the Twin Peaks a little bit, so we should dive into it. One of the things about this game is that it is, like Kojima's work, it's heavily influenced by American pop culture, especially Twin Peaks. That's a thing you knew about it. That's a thing I knew about it going in. We'll talk in a little bit about the things that I didn't know about it going in, and I'm going to share with you just to kind of like broaden out your understanding of the game, so as you play it more, you maybe explore things you might not otherwise. But how does it rate for you? Like, what parts of it are you pulling out and saying, oh yeah, that's Twin Peaks to me, and where do you think it departs?
Yeah, that's a good question, but I think it's so far a tricky question for me, because so I'm I mentioned some of the editorial opinions about that. You've brought it up before, so I generally knew about it. The trouble with going into the game this so much later for me, and knowing that going in, unfortunately, that sets a bar that it probably doesn't really want to be set.
Yeah.
Because I'm going in and I'm now, and I didn't do this consciously. I just kind of realized it as I was playing. And now that you're asking me, I'm like, oh yeah, I actually I'm very judgy for this game because of that comparison. So I'm coming in, I'm like, so to your point on like what's landing and what's not, there are definitely many moments when I'm like, okay, you're trying too hard to be Lynchian. And so I'm, down to York himself, right? It's like he's definitely a jerk version of
Dale,
of Cooper, but so far at least, maybe he becomes nicer later. But he's not as likable as Cooper is. So he's Dark Cooper.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and in the same way, George Woodman is no Harry S. Truman.
George Woodman. Yeah, the names are great, though. I will say that they have nailed a lot of the naming. Even the town, I think, is great. Greendale.
Emily Wyatt. Instead of naming her Naomi Watts,
Polly, or what's
Polly, the hotel.
Yeah, Polly. What though? Polly.
Oh, I've forgotten. Yeah, sorry.
She's a great character. Oh man, that scene at the table.
So that's a good moment, right?
It's a really good moment, and that's
Can you describe the moment? Because I specifically noted that one. Like I had forgotten that. but also, I also, before you describe the scene, I want to also remind people that, I think I got my first widescreen high def TV in like 2008. Right. So it's
Yeah,
also
I'm
that
a little
transition.
behind everybody on this.
Yeah, I'm well behind, but 2005 would have been the first gen with HD native.
Yeah, okay, fair, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not that far. Like, I bought my Xbox 360, I think, in 2008, um, and a TV that same year to have the HD. But we're not that far. I mean, that's the generation in which we go widescreen by default. Before then, it was some games were 4:3. I think Beyond Good and Evil was like the first kind of mainstream game that was actually 16:9 with black bars top and bottom on a 4:3 TV to kind of put
Which
that in
game? Sorry,
perspective.
I missed it. What did
Beyond
you say?
Beyond Good and Evil.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I also remember, yeah, I just remember myself Dead Rising on the
Sure,
360 was a big
a big
high res
deal.
moment because remember
Yeah.
they had that whole controversy about reading the text because
Oh,
they're like
right. Yeah,
no
yeah.
one was used to making UI for a high def TV, and they all had developed it probably on monitors, so the
Right.
text was too small
Yeah.
because it was so clear,
Yeah.
but they're
I
like, oh,
still
we
have
can
that
make
problem. So
yeah, right, yeah, yeah.
there's plenty of
So
games where I'm still like,
they
oh,
had to
why can't
patch
the
it
yeah,
basically, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
because we didn't know how to develop for HD. I was at Crystal at the time, and I remember playing it in a meeting room. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, I think so. So before I describe the table scene, it is a good example of one of the positive moments for me. And basically, like to your original question, like basically scene by scene, I'm going through and judging how well it lives up to its inspirations. And for instance, I actually did think the opening cutscene, with the exception of the lady in the tree
yeah,
and the snake and like things being, it's not just the problematic aspects, but it's more of just like being a little bit too on the head, like the
yeah, yeah.
snake
Oh,
but
yeah, it's very
and
Garden of Eden, and
yeah, and the Jesus,
yeah,
and
yeah,
there's thorns around her wrists and
yeah,
things
around
like
our
that.
arms, yeah,
So, all that being said, the other aspects of that, like for instance, the twins finding a ladybug and this, I guess we know it's their grandfather, but he's still creepy as hell,
yeah. part of
laughing in a
part of that
creepy
is the
way.
tech, but yeah,
Yeah, no, and it's like, how much of it was intentional and how much of it was just the the nostalgia of the old
right,
old video games. But I will say that that scene felt like the opening scene feels like somebody who does really have an intentional goal of how they're going to direct the game, and there's a lot of discipline in that scene, because they spend a lot of time on these two kids playing with a ladybug,
yeah,
and that just would never happen in those days, right? It
yeah,
still
yeah,
doesn't happen.
yeah.
And so I got to hand it to him. That's like, okay,
It doesn't even happen in movies much anymore. Like,
right,
I
exactly. No,
can't even tell
totally.
you how many times I'll hear a review where somebody will, some critic will call out, like on a podcast, will call out how refreshing it is that they spend a little time, or they'll watch an old movie from the 70s and be like, yeah,
Yeah.
remember when we used to have these little character moments which developed the world and the setting, and
Says two old white guys.
yeah,
Yeah.
you sort of you hold on a scene longer than you need to because it tells you something about the time, and
Yeah.
or you follow a camera. Yeah. Anyway.
So very appreciative of that, and it does show that not only does he and the team have discipline, but it also shows that they were allowed to do it, right? They were left alone to do what they felt it was right. So that opening scene set a good context for me, and then the end of that opening scene, where literally they go through character by character, showing everyone crying
Yeah.
at Anna's death, I guess,
Yeah.
and then it's sort of like the absurdity starts coming in. And then you have the dream sequences, which that's an example of that I would say is like trying too hard,
Yeah. Yeah.
where it's like, okay, that's the Red Room from, that's the Black Lodge from Twin Peaks, blah blah blah, but it's their version, and it's out of time, out of space. I guess it's a dream. So there's some heavy-handedness, but every once in a while there's definitely some moments, and I think the writing actually, which I think he wrote the script as well,
I believe that's
there's some
true.
localization challenges, but there's some, oftentimes I think the writing is very quirky and very on point when it comes to the
I
inspiration.
have to say the writing of York talking to Zach, who
Yeah,
you don't
that's
know who is, but he's talking to Zach about Tom and Jerry. And the
Yeah.
way it's set up is
So good. That's
is
so
like,
good.
well, Jerry, Tom, it's if it's
It's a
consensual.
codependent.
Yeah, yeah, they're codependent. Yeah, it's very like psychological, and he's talking with
Yeah.
Zach, and you're like, wait, who is he? Like, it sounds like coworkers or
Yeah.
family members or something like that, like people they know. And then eventually it becomes clear that they're talking about the cartoon characters, Tom and Jerry, the cat and the mouse. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's a
No.
very
Yeah.
like, there's that scene where Quentin Tarantino talks about the, I don't know, homoerotic undertones of Top Gun in some movie, like I've forgotten even the name of the movie back in the 90s. Where it's
Yeah.
like this intensity of pop culture analysis that was also kind of a thing, right? That in the kind of in that time period, which of course this is where more or less where this is set and when this is
Yeah.
set. So
Yeah.
it's on multiple levels for me working in that moment. When it's at its best, it's like, whoa, this is really keyed in to what it's doing in a really, I mean, it's not always great, but it's certainly, like you said, knows what it's trying to do.
Yeah.
It may
And I
not
think
always
it,
succeed at that, but we can't all be David Lynch.
no, nobody can.
Yeah.
Nobody ever will, I think. But I agree with you that so far, doing it in this medium with this technology, maybe, I don't know. I'm going to talk myself out of that because there's definitely, I think they could have gone in some direction stylistically to help themselves with the fidelity and all that kind
Mm,
of stuff
hmm.
that would have actually been beneficial. But those are lessons I think we learned later anyway. And they were just trying to make a engine work, so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get that. I'm not going to fault them for that. But, I do agree with you that the hit rate is higher than the miss rate. So I'm still, happy about that. And the Tom and Jerry conversation, because it was so early, I think the scene after the first scene, right? Or the
Yeah.
third.
I mean,
Um,
he's in the car still, and they're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about
So
that. Yeah.
that was definitely the moment when I was like, okay, this is something.
Yeah.
Something's going on here. This that is actually good and intentional, and yeah, like you said, knows what it wants to be. And you said this in pre-show, which is another topic we may talk about probably in every episode. But there's an ambition here that he has and that the team has that you can see as well. And they're gonna when you're gonna be that ambitious, you're gonna fall short on some things. It's just inevitable. But at least they're going for it. So that leads us to maybe there's many other scenes along the way. Some of the flashback stuff, and there's definitely, and to your point, he lingers on characters longer than anyone really should in this
Yeah.
time,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and the music, he has this, there's this one song, one of my notes I wrote down was, which is funny because in our household it's a Gilmore Girls reference, but for this game I called the La La song.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
There's like a kind of a folky, tranquil La La song where there's some singing with it. They're just la-laing, and he puts it in the weirdest scenes,
Yeah.
and then he just lingers on somebody's face who obviously due to the technology can't really emote at all.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is definitely that era of Uncanny Valley where we are filling in a lot of the blanks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And for better or for
I,
worse, mostly worse these
I
days.
actually think he's leaning into the uncanny valley in that
Yeah,
moment.
and
Like he knows that it doesn't look human,
yeah, right.
and he's kind of playing with that in a way that in a lot of other horror games of this era, and even now, right? Still, instead of trying to show, you're showing distorted things, right? I mean, that's kind of horror's bread and butter in video games, is like things that are not human, because we can't replicate humans well, so we just kind of go to these other places, zombies certainly, which were human, but they don't have any humanity left, and the fact that they have an uncanny valley totally works. That's fine. Here the people are weird to look at, and he
Yeah.
just, I think, is just kind of leaning into that in a way that I think Lynch would do at times, because he's, a lot of his characters and actors I should say, actors are not like straight from central casting, especially in his older work, where people are just more unusual looking or more unusually behaving. If you think of like Blue Velvet and going that far back, he doesn't go to like ordinary, traditional stars in most cases, and not in all cases. In some cases, he's definitely leaning. I mean, Naomi Watts is a
Watts.
star, um, but a lot of his actors are just kind of offbeat characters, and
Yeah, yeah.
and he lingers on them as well, and in the same way that Swery is. So,
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know how they didn't get in trouble for this, but Emily in the game is basically modeled after Naomi
oh,
Watts,
I
and
know
so I'm
she's
like,
like,
I was
she
like, oh boy,
looks just like her.
you're lucky that
This was the time
Naomi
before people were very
probably
litigious about
doesn't
such things. Yeah.
and doesn't know what video games, maybe doesn't know how to even find this, but
Well,
um,
that happened with The Last of Us, and I forget who it was, but Ashley Johnson Ellie actually looks a lot like Ashley Johnson if you know Ashley Johnson, but she also looked a lot. Oh, like what's her name?
Abby.
No. In the first game, she looked a lot like the actress in Juno, who's trans, is now male.
Oh, yeah,
Elliot Page,
yeah, LA Page, yep.
that threatened to sue, and then they're like, no, it's based on this person. um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think yeah, agreed. Yeah, yeah. It's tricky. Yeah,
yeah,
but I mean, what I was going to say as far as like the performances, and I do want to give him, to your point, the benefit of the doubt that he's leaning into the uncanny valley for sure, because he definitely seems to know. Like they even could have done a little bit more to hide it, but aren't, right. Like
yeah,
facial expressions aren't even there, so it could have been a production reality. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he kind of knows how weird it is. Because I would say we're still modern AAA games and quadruple A games are still chasing the photorealistic face and
yeah,
facial expressions, and we're still not there yet.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
there's some amazing stuff out there, but you still, yeah, for a non-gamer to look at that stuff, trust me, I've had firsthand experience where people are like, "That is creepy. What is that?" And I'm like, "No,
yeah,
that's the best we can do." It's like,
yeah.
"No, it's
Well, you got
bad.
a ways
It's
to
still
go.
bad.
Yeah,
It's still bad."
yeah,
So yeah, so leaning into it, but then you have this scene with this the hotel um, owner, and her husband's passed away. She's an older woman, older white woman, and she's hunched over. Very all of his characters so far are very stereotypical cliche characters, and some of them are pretty unfortunate, I'd say. But
yeah, yeah,
I won't get into that. But Polly's cool. She's got a good little backstory that is revealed very quickly. He has come out to this he comes out of his room, and it's a very creepy, empty hotel. Chairs are even on top of tables, right?
yeah,
Like they've cleaned, but it's the middle of the day,
yeah.
or at least the middle of the
It's
morning.
in mid morning. Yeah,
And so you already get, it's not necessarily a shining vibe, but it's definitely doesn't feel welcoming.
yeah.
And then she's the only one there. And for some reason, the banquet table in the cafeteria, they keep calling it, is a really long banquet table, like in Batman long,
Yeah,
and they both sit at either end
yeah,
of
yeah.
the table, and then
So
to
good.
your point, to your widescreen point, they frame the shot beautifully where they're both on either side, either edge of the screen. And then I can't tell if they're on a balcony or something, but the background
There is
is
a balcony on the other
outside.
side of
Yeah,
the
so you're
table. Yeah,
seeing trees, you're seeing the Pacific Northwest.
there's windows there, but they're floor to ceiling, and it's a high ceiling besides. So,
Yeah, so
in
you
fact,
see,
when you're that close in, you actually can't see the ceiling. All you
yeah,
see are the trees and things like that.
it looks very surreal, right? Because it
Yeah,
looks like they're kind of, it looks like there's a wall missing,
yeah, yeah.
and obviously everyone knows I'm partial to the Pacific Northwest, but he also, it hits the Alan Wake card, and the Stephen King stuff, Pacific Twin Peaks, Northern Exposure, like name the sort of, the mystique, I guess I'll say,
Hmm.
of a good old Pacific Northwestern forest. Um, but then they're sitting and she can't hear too well.
and he can hardly hear her either because she doesn't speak too loud.
So it's, he's saying stuff and she thinks he's saying something else, and he's like, come close, can you come closer so I can hear you better? And she's like, no, I don't, that's not appropriate.
Yeah, she's very coquettish about it, like he's hitting on her or something.
So it's just a really, that and Tom and Jerry so far are the ones where I'm like, okay,
those are good. Yeah. Those are good.
Yeah, if there's at least even if there's, even if 25% of the game achieves this, then it'll be worth it to me. It's just doing this consistently, being Lynchian consistently. I can only imagine is very difficult.
Yeah.
As an audience member, I will say even Lynch himself isn't consistent all the time for me personally.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's like, it's not easy to do. So I got to hand it to him for even trying. And the fact that they had some of these scenes.
That was the problem with Twin Peaks, right? Is that they had a hard time sustaining.
Yeah. How do you end that thing?
Yeah. Over the course, even just the 2 years of the first two seasons, it was just very difficult to maintain that kind of, and on the schedule that a network TV show required, it was basically impossible. These days it would be done differly, but
you'd have shorter seasons.
You'd have shorter seasons and they'd be further apart. So
yeah,
but
we're about to start rewatching.
Oh yeah, I rewatched earlier this year. I've got it all in my brain right now.
Ken's not going to watch season 3, so I'll be continuing solo on that part.
Oh, okay.
But yeah,
I'm a big fan of season 3. I know
you've said that. I only saw it the one, so it'll be interesting. I wonder if I don't know how quickly we'll watch it, but it'll be very timely.
Yeah,
playing this game, so I'll have a good back to back comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the challenge, and to hit one of the other topics I know you had that is a segue, and we'll talk much more, I think, in the future episodes about when it comes to the gameplay, unfortunately, and the world structure. Like I did not know it was an open world game. It's tagged as an open world game.
Yeah.
I
didn't know that going in. So
okay, yeah, you drive a car pretty early.
Yeah,
which I was like, what am I doing right now?
Yeah.
And it's actually there's quite a few mechanics related to it.
The whole controller is taken up with mechanics.
Yeah, they got all sorts of stuff. Yeah,
and so this is the part where I'm going to blow your mind, because I think it's important for you to know this. So it is an open world game. There is kind of a schedule of events because it's also a simulated city in a way. All the characters have routines that they are doing before you've even met the characters. All the characters in this little town have things that they are doing that might not intersect with the plot at all, like that you might not need to see.
So it's a little Shenmue in that way.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And you would have no idea. The first time I played it, I played it and I was like, wow, I really like that. But I played basically the linear adventure, the survival horror linear adventure of this game. And then I was looking at because you know me, I was looking at the achievements list and I'm like, this is what now? And it's like, if you bring, a certain item to a person at their home, at these hours of the night, you get a thing. And then it's like, well, okay, well, I'll go try to do that. And then you're in some trailer park somewhere or at a diner. I don't remember what was the first thing I did. I went to some place and I was like, wait a minute, there's all these people here just having life. They're just, and they might intersect with the story later, but I haven't met any of these people, but I can just go to where they are, and just like skip the schedule, and my mind was so blown at how much work had been put into, and that's why, because I know you're not going to ever play this again. So I want you to know this now that
I appreciate it.
There are people in all these houses. There are, all the ones certainly that are marked, because if you look on the pause screen, there's a map and there's like a lot of kind of places of interest, but there are places that you don't have to go ever, but that's where the people live. So if you want to go see them after hours, they're there, and you can see like stuff about their lives, which has a very also Twin Peaks sort of feel, because Twin Peaks would often like have little scenes of characters in their element, right? And it was all tied in some way. Well, it wasn't tied into the main story necessarily, but it was tied into the experience of Twin Peaks. And this also has that. And it's the part that, is most surprising to me of a game of this era. And Shenmue is definitely, I hadn't played Shenmue back then, is a good sort of touch point for that. It's also kind of similar to the games I've worked on where characters have schedules, but it's much richer.
Yeah.
And the connections between all those characters feel really thought through, in the way that, like Bobby and Madge character and, Leo and all of that stuff, all Shelley, all fit together, and then how that tied to the diner, and then like all these things, there's kind of all of that going on as well. So it's this web of character connectivity, for lack of another phrase, that is in this game and is not even remotely apparent. You sort of like, if you know it's there, you can sort of feel it in the police station, because characters are moving around from room to room. There's some unnamed characters, but like Emily is not always in one place, and George is not always in one place.
Wow.
Tommy is kind of in one place because he's trying to figure out how to get into the files or whatever, because he lost the squirrel. You can also ask him about all the different squirrel keys. Like if I know you got to that part, right? Did you finish at a police station?
Oh no, I thought we were just supposed to get there. No, I haven't
Okay,
finished
right.
it. I just
Well,
got there.
yeah. So there's a whole thing with keys, and they all have different squirrels as the keychains. And like, I knew which one he needed, and so I gave him all the other ones, because he would say, "Oh no, this is this type of squirrel. No, you're looking for a southern flying squirrel." And he'd like describe this other squirrel, and
Yeah.
and York would be like, "Well, this one's not even a squirrel at all. It's a chipmunk." Just like it is like the amount of detail that goes into some of this stuff is very, it's a lot
It
of fun.
sounds like a yes game. Sounds like they were having
Yeah,
fun. It reminds me also of some aspects of Dead Rising, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
that though
A
not
schedule game.
not truly simulated, it
Yeah,
was the impression of simulation.
yeah. Yeah, it's got a script, and when characters are going to appear, and when you can find them at different times.
Yeah, you can miss stuff, right? And
Yeah,
like, you have to kind of, yeah, and it's meant to be replayed and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm still glad we played Dead Rising, because that is such a, um, yeah, I still love that game. But
yeah. I had a blast with it.
so yeah, so that's really interesting. I really am glad you brought it up. I'm happy that they did that, and it for me at least, it goes back to the influences as well, because Twin Peaks, Northern Exposure, not just Pacific Northwest shows, but there was a third one I was just thinking of, and now I just blanked on it. But I don't think Lynch and Snow are on Mark Snow, right? Did I get that right? Yeah. I don't think they're on record saying that the
Mark Frost.
Frost. Sorry, Mark
Yeah.
Snow or
I was
Snow
like,
is X
is
Files.
this a Northern Exposure guy? Yeah. Go ahead.
No, Snow is X Files
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
So I'm getting all my 90s mixed up. But
yeah.
anyway, Twin Peaks was very much, the town was a character, right? And I
Right,
feel
right.
like, to your point on like all the web and interrelationships in that show, yes, it was about, at least for a lot of it, Laura Palmer specifically and all of that, but it really was about sort of that web and how everybody interconnected. And of course, the soap opera aspects of it, it all was about like gossip and, oh, there's actually a backstory with these two characters, and oh, these two, this one is, so it's like, that's kind of the bread and butter of that stuff. So the
Yeah,
fact that they have taken the video game medium, and created a simulated version of that, makes me even more excited, because, I think we talked about this in pre-show. We know the history of Alan Wake development wise, and that
yeah,
they had originally wanted to make an open world game, and maybe there would have been some of those simulated aspects, right, where it's like things would have to be on schedule. Like for instance, when when I was told to go to the sheriff's station in this game, it said, "Oh, we open at 9." I was like, "What do you mean you open at 9?
Yeah.
What? Well, I have to wait?"
Yeah,
And then I
and
was
when
like,
you're
"Oh
driving,
no."
the clock is ticking right there on the dash, or
Yeah.
on the, I guess it's on the HUD, it's not on the dashboard, but, it kind of feels like it's on the dash. Yeah, and there will be times that the schedule is frustrating. I'll be completely
Yeah,
upfront
that's the
about that.
downside to this
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I definitely I can remember the first time I played it. I think when you're actually going to the tree, which was our original target, I kept not getting there in time, and I think it was because uh, at the beginning of the game, when I was getting used to the driving controls, like it took me too long to get to the sheriff's station, and that threw me off for the whole day, or whatever,
Yeah.
which is also a bit of a drawback. It does, excuse me, I feel like it opens up a bit as far as the schedule goes after that. But that first day feels like a lot more constrained. And I think one of the things about this that's interesting, compared to like Alan Wake's open world, Alan Wake wanted to have the open world about just like all the forest and stuff. And this is the town is the open
This is
world.
about the town. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that
That's a
it's a
good
good
point.
choice, and I think that choice makes it possible to have this richness
Yeah.
and, um, and also surprising, like because it does, it does mean a lot of authoring that most people I don't think would see. Like I said, I think the first time I played it, I had like when I played through it, I had no idea, and then I was literally like, oh well, oh my god, I have like 30 trophies I haven't done. Like, what's going on? And I'd go and look at them, and I'd be like, wait a minute, who? Like
Yeah.
when? What are you talking about?
Mhm.
And they're all very specific and like do this for this person by this time, um, and things like that, or at this time, and they tell you like literally in them like how you would do it, but it does once you start doing them, you're like what is going on, like this wasn't part of my game. Like I didn't know
Yeah.
this was here, and it is I wouldn't want you to not know that, because like I said, I know you probably won't play it again, and it would be frustrating to get to the end and go, wait a minute, I missed a huge part of the, I don't know, the world of this game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. It makes me really want to investigate the Steam Deck then too, because that'll make it easier for
you
me
make it easy for you. Yeah,
to play
yeah,
it. Yeah,
look into
yeah.
that. There's a
So
link,
I'll
like I
look into
said.
that. Thanks
Yeah,
for whoever, Mark or somebody who.
yeah, I
I have
forget who it
some
was.
guesses at who it could be, but yeah, thanks for putting that
It
up.
wasn't Mark, but
Okay.
yeah,
Um, yeah, there's the us Steam Deck folks are we band together.
yeah. Well, you have to when you're talking about trying to support PC games that go back, 30
Yeah.
years or whatever. It's everybody's got to try to pull together on that. Let's put a pin in it there. We're going to want to talk about combat. There's going to be a lot more to talk about in the
Yeah.
future, certainly with combat, but with all of what's going on in this game. And it's been 15 years since I played it, or near enough. So there's definitely a lot that's going to come back to me as well as we play. I do think we'll have covered all the topics in 3 weeks, but you may want to play more of it. So it'd be good to have it on your Steam Deck. Let's quickly turn to email. We have a couple. We might as well get through them this week. They're about Portal. And these were, of course, sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. Why don't you go first with this one from Ashton Herman?
Okay, games that had to be games from Ashton Herman. Yeah, hey, Tim and Brett. I was really drawn in by our conversation on Portal and how it had to be a game, quote unquote. I totally agree that it's a great example of a game that really feels indivisible from its medium. Could its story be adapted to a book or movie or something else? Sure, but the adaptation would be dramatically different as the experience from the source material. It's a question I like to ask myself a lot when I'm playing a new game. Could this thing have worked as well or better as a movie? I don't personally believe that it's the end all be all of a game's artistic merit, but I do think it can be a helpful thought exercise when trying to unpack what makes a given game work for me or not. I was reminded by an indie game called The Red Strings Club, which looks and feels like a classic LucasArts point and click, but plays out more like a visual novel. There's relatively little gameplay in it, and I can actually remember asking myself at one point if I wouldn't have preferred to read its narrative in a graphic novel or something. But then the game started asking me some really challenging philosophical questions. They had a relatively minor impact. They had a relatively minor impact on the game's story, but by posing the questions to me in an interactive medium, I was forced to grapple with some of my own deeply seated beliefs in a way that I don't think I would have if it hadn't been a game. I wrote about it at length back when I played it, and don't want to take up any more of your time. I just really appreciated your perspectives around this topic. I guess I wanted to add in my 2 cents that a game doesn't even need to be as mechanically complex as Portal is to leverage its medium to great effect. Instead, the sheer nature of video games as interactive experiences lends themselves to player/reader engagement in a way that I think is both unique and powerful. Thanks as always, Ashton Herman. So well put, better than I could have.
Yeah, better put than we did, I think. Yeah, I mean, I am always reminded of like something like The Walking Dead or whatever, which doesn't have a lot of mechanical depth. When I think about questions like these, and the mere fact that the choices that you're making, do have an impact on you, even if they don't really have an impact on the story. I mean, the game's going to end where it ends in the end of episode 5 or whatever it is. That's where you're going. You're always going there, and the mere fact, though, of making choices that you make is the feelings you have making them. Like that's part of the experience.
I think Gone Home is another example
Yeah.
for me too, because I think when we played the indie series, specifically the walking simulators, Dear Esther is the only walking simulator I had played before all of that, and I had intentionally avoided them because I'm such a mechanics and systems snob. I was like, I don't know. I want something richer in the gameplay space. But I was so wrong. And to Ashton's point and your point, Gone Home, yes, Gone Home probably could have been in other mediums. And we're not saying they can't be translated to other mediums. It just would be a very different experience to have Portal be that.
Right.
And wouldn't, I don't think, be what I would want personally. But Gone Home, though canned, so to speak, story, I think because it was interactive for me at least, had, I think, a bigger impact for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're doing the work, right? As we talked about, you're uncovering the connections, and like you're spending the time when you're not playing the game, you're thinking about the game at times. I certainly do with some of those games that have been impactful for me. I wouldn't say that happens as much with the richer games, the richer, more systemic games, right? I don't tend to think about them a lot when I'm away from them.
Well, that's not the case for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we're different in that regard, but some yes, some no, but
yeah,
no,
no,
I mean,
not all of them, but
yeah,
yeah. I'm very, like, just to give you an example of like it has story, but it's not really the focus. It has a campaign sort of. I'm very deeply into No Man's Sky right now. And I think about the game constantly, and it's basically a survival game. So it's like, I can't wait to build my this, that, or, it's like, it's a completely lore and story agnostic thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think there are games where there's experimentation and things like that, and those I do appreciate thinking about when I'm not there. Oh, I should try this. I should try that.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, I'm more thinking like, I don't know, like I don't think about JRPGs when I'm not playing them. I love them, but
right. Yeah.
Put them down and I forget until I pick it up again. So it's kind of like that. Anyway, I mean, those are games that have tons of systems often that are interacting, and I just don't really think about them. But then, other games I do. Anyway, thank you for that, Ashton. You did really put that nicely and succinctly. I appreciate the input. I have one here from Mike. The subject is simply Portal. He says it's about both of them. Thank you for your recent episodes about Portal. When Brett mentioned portals are safe, I thought about how that contrasted with Quake, where a teleportation conflict means instant death. Yes, I also thought about that. Unfortunately, I think most of the specific praise you gave Portal doesn't carry to its sequel. When Tim mentioned figuring out how to aim at distant walls, I thought about how Portal 2 will, quote unquote, snap your portal to a specific position if your aim is close enough. I use this a lot during the underground aperture science segment, but it feels a lot less like discovery and more like scripting. Thanks again, Mike. I agree. I think
I didn't
probably.
even know it did that. Wait,
Oh yeah. If you
is there a
point,
button?
no. It's just when you shoot at a wall, it will, especially if it's one of those walls that's not super wide or whatever.
Yeah.
It will actually align itself perfectly for you in the center of that wall.
But it'll actually move your camera?
It won't move the camera, it'll move the portal.
Oh, yeah, I
So
didn't
you'll
notice
shoot at
that.
the
That's a
wall and
bummer.
it'll move it. And I mean,
It's kind of the
typically we're aiming.
autocorrect.
Yeah, it's kind of correcting for you. I suspect that was maybe a response to some feedback.
Usability problem. Yeah,
Yeah,
people probably kept shooting it off angle walls, and they're like, "I
yeah,
know I'm hitting this wall,"
right.
and they're like, "Well, I guess not," and then they
Yeah,
move on. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
that's a double-edged sword. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And so if you like the freedom or you want to experiment more, it is a little harder. I have noticed it playing it, that it is kind of like helping me solve in that way. And the original doesn't do that at all, that I could tell.
So my my snarky, unfair response to that is we've talked about many times on the podcast, and that feels like a band-aid to a level design problem where level design did
Mm-hmm.
not work well enough with systems design to, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
now obviously once the levels are blocked out and
There are a lot more levels
down the
in Portal
production
2.
shoot, it's you just sometimes you just can't go back and fix this stuff like that. But Valve usually has the
Yeah,
ability and
yeah, and the time.
resources to,
Yeah.
so it's like, I don't know, if you're snapping like that, then there's something else was wrong. So again, I'm not. It's easy for me to say I have not made a Portal game, and they did wonderfully, better than I could do. So I'm not trying to be high and mighty, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I have noticed it mostly playing I haven't noticed it so much in co-op because we're kind of, although I do see it sometimes, I do notice like, oh, that moved a little bit from where I shot.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are, I would say the places where I most want the help is in those kind of high velocity situations where I'm like, I'm shooting out of here to go, and oh my God, I've got to land a shot on this thing before I get there. And, I suspect they might have gone just a little more in that direction, but it's a good point. I wouldn't say that the praise doesn't carry to its sequel. I don't, the scripting, I don't know. It doesn't quite feel that bad to me, but I could see how it would rub some folks the wrong way. We'll talk about that more in a few weeks. As I plugged earlier, we will be doing a Portal 2 bonus cast in a few weeks. So, and you will see all that information in the Discord.
This is just making me remember Portal all over again, and how good that game is.
Oh, it's so good. It's so
the first
good.
one.
Oh my God. Yeah. We have a fan run Discord, and you should check that out. We are on the web at devgameclub.com, and my co-host Twitch is at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
We, of course, will be both on there the next few Wednesdays, where I will be joining Tim in co-op Portal 2. We've been playing some Spelunky first, and then going and basically doing a section of levels. Like the co-op campaign is like organized around concepts. So we've done the first two of those concepts, and next time I guess we'll do concept 3. So looking forward to it.
And thanks to, just to plug it, thanks to Calamity for helping me with getting the automated YouTube video on demand uploading going.
Oh, cool.
So from now on, as long as I remember to press the button, Brett had to remind me of even that step last week, because it's, usually I'm like, I'm tired, time to go. But now if you miss the VODs even on Twitch, because I don't have them up there forever, they should from now on always be on our YouTube channel.
That's right. They'll be at YouTube / @devgameclub. So we're on there as well. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, that Discord, our merch store, all by Mark Garcia. Have fun reading signs in your coffee this week, and good night.
Good night.